So here we are. I am happy to be joined with Julie Gunnigle. She is a friend of mine. I consider you a friend, Gunnigle, right?
Right back at you, Curland.
Thanks so much. I met Julie when she was running for the House seat in District 15, which is kind of borders our House seat that I'm running for in District 23. And we kind of became friends through that area. And then now it turns out that after 13 years as a prosecutor and a nonprofit leader, as well as that legislative candidacy, now you are running for the Democratic nomination in the Maricopa County Attorney. How are you, Julie Gunnigle?
Oh, I am spectacular, Eric Curland. What time is it?
I don't know. It's about 5 o'clock.
No, it's
time for a teacher.
Early adopter and endorser, big fan of yours. You hope and you need to win in this next election. So
you are so kind. For the viewers out there and for yourself, Gunnigle, I will interrupt from time to time to reintroduce you because we have people that will come and go. We do have our wonderful campaign manager, my campaign manager, Andy Gomez, and she's working the dials. She's flipping the switches. So if you out there in internet world, if you have a question you'd like to ask, you go ahead and type it into the screen there in the Facebook live stream. She will then text it to me on my handy dandy smartphone, and I will then get the question over here to Julie Gunnigle. So we're going to have a wide-ranging conversation. First, how are you and your family doing during this time of pandemic?
We're good, although I would be lying if I said it wasn't craziness at my house. As you know, I have 3 young children at my house, 2 of which have special learning needs. I have a husband who's been home for almost a month, who's in supply chain management. I have a campaign that needs to reach 4.4 million people. And from time to time, I still take cases through my private law practice. So we're crazy. How are you?
So you're not doing much, is basically what I'm hearing. You're taking the long way to the fridge to try to exercise.
Right. And, I just got my, I don't know if you know this, I'm a cyclist. So I just got my bike set up.
Wait a second. You have a whole bunch of things on the wall.
Oh, yes, I do. But those are from running.
Okay.
From time to time, Jennifer Samuels, who you might know, and I go out and we mile bike.
Hi, Jennifer.
Yeah. So I don't know. We're trying to stay active. What have you been doing?
I have been taking the long way to the couch, back from the refrigerator. It's been family time, which is the great part of sequestering. And it's been family time, which is the worst part of sequestering. Right. So as a kid, I tried to stow away and have a quiet moment in my garage. But I only have one child. Hey, so let's get down to it. One of my passions and the things that I would like to correct, basically in Arizona, we don't fund much of anything. We have a budget that is really tiny, and there are so many things pulling on that budget, right? We have an education system that is completely underfunded, and yet the people that have been in power will say, well, it's almost half of the budget. But it's kind of like the budget is a pizza. And instead of a family pizza, our state has a personal pan pizza. So when you get half of a personal pan pizza, you're not feeding anybody. But in competition for those small dollars are our prison systems. And right now, after 20 years of Republican rule, we have flipped the switch where we used to spend twice as much money on higher education than incarceration. We have now flipped to where spending twice as much on incarceration. Miss Julie Gunnigle, let me put you on the spot. How can we reduce the prison population here in Arizona?
Oh my gosh, it's not rocket science. Okay, every jurisdiction has this issue. What we have chosen to do in Arizona, though, is anonymous across our country. We are the 5th largest incarcerator in our country, which makes us the 8th largest incarcerator in the world. Our state, this is a statewide number, and it's to the tune of $1.2 billion a year. Yes.
Wait, we are 8th largest in the world.
World.
You hear that, folks? Arizona's going world.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Hey, Julie, let me ask you, before you go on, how can people get in touch? We're going to put this in the bar here for people to get in touch with you and your campaign. Give us a website.
Gunnigle2020.com. Gunnigle 2020.com, on Twitter at Julie Gunnigle, and on Instagram at Gunnigle 2020.
Gunnigle.
Gunnigle.
Okay. So go ahead. Tell us about us being the 5th largest in the United States, 8th largest in the world, spending over $1 billion on incarceration. How's that working for us? What can we do?
Well, it turns out that incarceration is a terrible investment in your community. We know that over-incarceration actually causes more crime than it might deter. We know that it tears apart families. We know that it destabilizes families. And we know that it makes our job force less attractive and less competitive nationwide. So there's simple things that we ought to be looking at. One of the big reasons why we got here is because of a mixed motive in our legislature. I know you and I have talked about this quite a bit.
Mandatory minimums.
It's, you know what, it's mandatory minimums. It is the private prisons funding our elections. It's a public corruption and, a self-enrichment problem. And it's this perverse notion that we need to have crazy long sentences in order to address crime.
And a crazy thing just happened. Speaking of a crime, I have John on the line who says those awards are for best husband.
I think I just.
Is that true?
Right? My long-suffering husband is incredible, and yes, I'm.
Wait a second. No, it says there are awards for best wife. I'm sorry. I had that wrong, John. I'm sorry, John. Look, let's be honest. Your husband is a tall drink of water, a good-looking man.
A good-looking man, and I mean, on top of being the most attractive precinct committee person in all of LD 15, or I'd wager to say the entire county, he works tirelessly to get good people elected. It's not just me that he's out there working for. I know he gave you signatures. He's worked for Seth. He's worked for Kathy and Katie and Sandra. And yeah, he's a good guy. Really good.
He's a peach. He's a peach. I'm sorry. Now let's get back to really important stuff.
No, hang on.
You stop interrupting.
He's not going to tell you this, but you know how we spent our honeymoon?
Right in front of that fireplace?
No, we got married in South Bend, Indiana, right after we both graduated from law school at the same time from Notre Dame.
Funny story how you got to Notre Dame. We'll get to that later, but go ahead.
But so we got married that next weekend, started studying for the bar, and then spent basically every moment of our free time trying to flip that congressional seat in Northwest Indiana and canvassing for then a fresh-faced young congressperson, Joe Donnelly, and got him elected to his first term.
That is so romantic. You know what? You and I have a lot in common. My wife, I met her as she came in one day to substitute in 5th grade across from my classroom.
Oh.
I said, that gal's mine. I sent a kid over to challenge her class to kickball, and the rest is history.
I love that. That is real love.
Yes. Okay. All right. Let's get serious. I know it's Friday fun day.
Let's do this.
Friday fun day. You have to show the shirt a little bit more. Remember, that was part of you paying to get on the show. Okay.
I think it's actually my husband's Curlin shirt. I don't know where mine is. I'm assuming one of my children took it.
One Love Gunnigle. Okay.
Curlin.
Go ahead. Tell us about the incarceration. I interrupted. I'm sorry. We are one of 3 states that requires 85% or more of a sentence to be served, no matter what the offense. Go ahead.
Yes, and while we're talking, and you and I are clearly friends, and I have a smile on my face, this is such a serious matter for every Arizonan. We should all be thinking about our criminal justice system and how we end up with these incredibly unjust outcomes. Part of it is this perverse way we've chosen to deal with drugs. Arizona is one of the last states to have a felony marijuana charge, and about 6.5% of everyone in prison right now is in prison for a marijuana offense, which is out of step with what we've seen in national trends toward legalization and public health. But it's not just that. It's that a full 2/3 of the cases that move through the county attorney's office are cases involving addiction and substance dependency disorders. And what we choose to do in Arizona, by virtue of mandatory minimums and the exercise of discretion that comes from the county attorney, is to incarcerate people rather than providing real treatment options and diversion. So if there is one change that we can make on day one that will not just save us money, but keep us safe and really provide that real second chance, it's to expand our diversion offerings and make sure that everyone who wants help can get it.
That's a lot. Actually, I've been talking too much. My campaign manager muted me for a while to put me into timeout. So thank you, Andy. I apologize. One of the things that I think is really also crazy about our state, and I'd like you to weigh in on, is the profits of private prisons. So here we are. There are certain, I think actually with this pandemic, I think there are certain functions of government that people are seeing are kind of needed. When profit is involved and people make a profit two ways, they either increase their revenues or decrease their expenses. Decreasing expenses, let's say the prisons, is basically giving worse, more inmates to less guards, less training, less locks that lock. I mean, it's different things that keep us all safe. So how does private prisons, the profiteering, fit into this equation of how much we spend on incarceration?
Well, I mean, two big ways. First, it incentivizes our state legislature and county attorneys to over-incarcerate. Once there's a profit motive involved, as you rightly put it, they need more customers, and those customers, they're pruning those customers actually earlier and earlier, right? As we look at our juvenile system, what we've really created is a pipeline that leads from our poorly funded public education system into juvenile detention and juvenile incarceration, and then into our private prisons for adults. And that creates a perverse profit motive. But the second thing I really want to push back on, there is a high cost to private prisons as well. While these were originally introduced in Arizona with the idea that private industry could incarcerate better, what we've seen is that that's both not true, and that there's even higher costs that we're not factoring in. When you look at how the private prison industry treats those who are incarcerated, or as it pertains to medical issues, doesn't treat, we're ending up as taxpayers not only having to defend those suits, but ultimately fund giant settlement agreements because our private prison industry isn't treating people even at a baseline of what should be, standard humane treatment.
Okay, so we are currently in lawsuits where we've been found guilty as a state, and it's cost us money. It's not good. Interesting side note, my District 23 House of Representatives, John Kavanaugh, a big private prison proponent, we used to have a thing where every year there would be an audit on private prisons versus the government-run prisons to see which was a better bang for the buck. Where were we getting the better value? And my pledge to you folks is once John Kavanaugh found out that the public prisons were actually a better deal, he got rid of the audit. My pledge to the voters of 23 and all of the people here in the state is that if I'm elected, I will get that thing back on the books where we do an audit so that we're not wasting money and we're, being really fiscal conservatives. I mean, it's not a partisan thing to want to use tax dollars wisely. Hey,
can I ask you a question? I know it isn't my show, but when you look at this bigger problem that we want to fix, right? We want to fix how much money we're spending and the terrible investment that is incarceration. And electing a reform-minded county attorney can do some of that work. For example, the county attorney has huge influence and discretion over who comes into the system, who to charge with which crimes and what kind of sentences to recommend. They also have some control on the outside. Once people emerge from prison and are released and go through reentry, whether or not they cycle back is something the county attorney is uniquely empowered to deal with. But the during is really something that the legislature needs to tackle. And I want to know, I haven't heard you talk about sentencing reform. Is that something that would be on your legislative agenda?
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, this is a Republican idea. It's happened in Texas, right next door, pretty much. And they've saved billions of dollars. So even just from the standpoint of a better budget to put money into education, those things that should be invested upon. Look, this is what I'm going to say, and I'm looking right at the camera. Walt Blackman, if you get reelected, I'm working with you across the aisle on sentencing reform. I've heard that guy. I love him. We might not agree on a lot of things, but that I am with you. How dat? Who dat? You're welcome. Hey, let me ask you something. You used to prosecute, and this is a question coming from some people. I don't know who they are because I'm getting it on my phone. but you were a prosecutor of political corruption, right? You were a special prosecutor in that regard. What do you think about this revolving door between politicians and lobbyists and, the seedy underbelly of this all? What can we do about it?
Yeah, we need better legislation and we need better enforcement. So one of the reasons that I ran for the House last cycle is I grew up in this community. In fact, my kids are going to the same schools that I went to. In fact, in the very same classrooms and sometimes with the very same desks. And I look at how under-resourced they are, and I started going down to the Capitol to advocate. And I saw just how weaponized we've made conflicts of interest, right? That people are openly able at our legislature to vote money into their own pocket, whether it be, the
charter schools,
whether it be charter schools, an absolute lack of accountability, right? These sorts of insider bidding schemes. 75% of our charter school contracts flow to people who are related, yes, or to the owners themselves. And when it comes to public bidding, I know this isn't something that's necessarily on everybody's radar, but that's corruption. Those are the exact sorts of schemes that would land you in jail in Chicago, the most corrupt place on the planet.
Okay, nothing against Chicago. All right, we like the pizza. Now, here's the funny thing. We have just talked about two different ways that people can be fiscally conservative without being idiots. First of all, you go out to bid, you get the best price or the best product, right? It's not a big deal. That is common sense for people. They've eliminated it so it's a friends and family plan. You don't have to do that with these charter schools. The other thing with the private prisons, let's check to see if we're getting our money's worth. Come on. Yeah. What kind of business just throws things at them and says, you know what, hey, we decided that back in 1972. We don't need to revisit that. Come on, please. Hey, Julie, I got another question for you, okay?
What's up?
Right now we're talking to Julie Gunnigle. She's a Democrat candidate for the Maricopa County Attorney's Office and a personal friend of mine. So look, Doug Ducey, master politician. I think we can both agree on that.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, as far as politicians go, this guy is right at the top. He does things very well, but it seems to me, and I'm sorry, Doug, if this offends you, but it seems to me he does it just for political gain. What do you think about this whole thing with the pandemic and those nonviolent first offenders that could be paroled right now, instead languishing in this kind of petri dish of disease?
So my official statement, which I released yesterday, was that this is bullshit. And I would like someone to show some, I hope that we're not family, I hope that this is not just a family-friendly podcast. I would like someone to show some leadership in this situation. And we have seen what that looks like in other states. It is terrifying, not just for those who work in our prison and jails, who are being exposed to this, who are being told not to wear personal protective equipment while at work. It is terrifying for those who are incarcerated. It is terrifying for their families. And we ought to have a plan, as so many other governors and responsible leaders have had, to release those who don't pose a threat to their community. I would push back a little bit about who those people could be, because I think it's a misnomer that it's just nonviolent first-time offenders who should be eligible. I think you're going to end up recreating a lot of the same racial disparities and poverty-based disparities we see in our criminal justice system if you do it like that. But there are some really smart people who've taken a look at who presents the least risk to our community and ways that they could be released tomorrow, and have put forward that plan to the governor. Now, it's not just our COVID-19 releases as well that we need to be concerned with.
No,
5 different people whose clemency papers were placed on Doug Ducey's desk, and he dragged feet and released them.
For clemency.
These people were terminally ill. They had less than 4 months to live. And in one case, he waited well over 2 months, and the person died just hours after being released to his family. He finally signed 3 of those papers. There are 2 more sitting on his desk right now, one dating back to December. And I don't want to speculate as to whether or not it's political, but it really shows me a lack of leadership. And that's what we need in this situation.
Yeah, so we're coming into the last third of our program. I'm with Julie Gunnigle. You can get to see her stuff, if you'd like, on gunnigle2020.com. Hey, real quickly, tell me something I need to know about the county attorney's office that I don't know.
Yeah, you might not know that this is one of the largest county attorney's office in our country. We haven't had a Democrat in this role in over 40 years. We've never elected a woman. And I say that because there's one thing that often doesn't come up in this conversation that I think we all need to be thinking about.
Hit it.
Yeah, it's all about autonomy. So Arizona is one of those states that has a trigger law. That is a law that goes into place that would make abortion a felony, and even the advertisement for sale of contraceptives a misdemeanor in our state. It's only unenforceable because of Roe v. Wade. So if you're watching the Supreme Court as carefully as I am, you know that this is a big issue were Roe to fall. My Republican opponent has said that if Roe were to fall, that it would be her moral and ethical duty to enforce those laws. I think that's wrong as a matter of morality, as a matter of policy, and it seems perverse that a woman's right to choose will now become a criminal decision in Maricopa County. So now more than ever, we need someone in this office who's going to live their values and reflect the values of our county.
Whew, that's heavy.
I know, I'm a downer, aren't I? I'm sorry. Not at stake.
Oh no! I mean, look. Here's the thing. We are going to have this show. We're here every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock, and we try to have something fun on Friday. Like next Friday, we got the Babe Council coming in, and Julie Morse. She's a great gal, and she's got this big thing with women's empowerment and entrepreneurship. But also next week, we have Moms Demand Action on Monday, leader of that. We have on Tuesday, we have the lead litigant from the Arizona Center of Law and the Public Interest. On Wednesday, we're going to have Secretary of State Katie Hobbs. On Thursday, we're going to have the House leader for the Democrats, Charlene Fernandez. But the week after, we're actually going to have Sivia Tamarkin on. And, you can kind of lead up to that. But what I want to say to you is that we're going to tackle all kinds of subjects on this show. I think people need to weigh in. I think we need to have adult conversations. I think we need, and you were talking, it hasn't been a Democrat elected to that position. I don't think county attorney is a political position, but I do believe when it comes to kind of a woman's right to autonomy, bodily autonomy, that too many of our Republican colleagues go with religion over all else. And if there's one part of that position that might call for a Democrat, I believe that's it. Upholding the Constitution, upholding the law, rather than divine intervention. And I hate to say that on Good Friday, but, that's where I am.
Yeah, and to that end, a lot of states have made this either a nonpartisan or an appointed position. Ordinarily, I think I'd be in favor of that kind of move. But now at this moment in history, I mean, we elect a prosecutor so that we know what her priorities are, right? This is a post that commands a ton of discretion. So I like this vetting process. I like that voters for once are having someone to choose from who can say, with total transparency, this is what I will and won't do with this office.
Okay, so it's still April. My friend Julie Gunnigle is joining us here. We got about 5 more minutes before we wrap up, and we will do something fun. But I want to ask you about this because my opponent in the House race for District 23 is a man by the name of Jay Lawrence. And when you go on his webpage, he's got all kinds of pictures of people endorsing him, and he plasters out there front and center. He talks about himself as a bigot, and he's this and he's that. But he loves himself some Joe Arpaio. He just loves some Joe Arpaio. Could you tell us, seriously, how much, and Joe Arpaio is running for sheriff again, which is quite amazing. God bless. But tell me, how much money is Joe Arpaio costing our county? And who's paying it?
Oh my goodness. Well, the latter answer is simple. We are all paying Sheriff Joe's legal fees. I don't know if they're tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, but we continue to pay his legal fees in part because of the actions that the Maricopa County Attorney's office has had. That's one of the reasons why we're still footing that bill. And while we're at it too, I mean, this is one of those offices that has a storied history with Sheriff Joe, right? The role of a prosecutor is to work together with law enforcement. And we had someone in this position during the SB 1070 days who was ultimately unwilling to hold their sheriff counterparts responsible, and who doubled down on those SB 1070 policies. So one of the things that my opponent, because Bill Montgomery got promoted to the Supreme Court, and there is a political appointee in this role right now. And one of the first things that they did was to voice their support of that SB 1070 copycat legislation that went through, that almost got through the House and Senate this legislative session.
The Senate didn't even want to do anything with it. I mean, they were so smart to be like, oh, this thing's radioactive.
Right.
She enforced it.
It was the only state agency or the only county agency from any municipality that voiced their support in favor of those laws.
Well, I'm going to put on my Nostradamus hat right now and say that that's going to be a big issue going forward. And here's the thing, we're in this pandemic and we have this opportunity, and I see so many people taking advantage of it, of being, putting more humanity back into life, right? So we're doing more to thank people, whether it's our first responders, whether it's the prison guards, whether it's the guy who's checking you out at the grocery store, or the gal kind of bagging up stuff. We are very thankful as a nation right now for every person that does our work. And quite frankly, the bigoted laws of the past is not going to work in this new society that we kind of come out of this pandemic with. I really feel like there's going to be more civility out there. I feel like people, like for instance, our campaign, we're doing this thing called Be the Rainbow, where we're asking all of our supporters and our volunteers if they would be willing to call a few of the people that live around their house who are older and maybe don't have anybody else at home. And we're finding a great response. These connections of neighbor to neighbor, of you and I having this conversation on Zoom, of me just last night having a Seder with 18 other people, for Passover that I would always ignore. I imagine there's going to be a lot of people on Sunday celebrating Easter through this same venue and actually having one-on-one conversations. We are getting to know our fellow man, we're getting to know our fellow woman, and we're no longer going to be afraid of each other. I hope so. So now, Julie Gunnigle, as we are nearing the end of our program, would you be willing to go on a date with me to the local pub?
Yes, but you have told me that I have terrible, terrible taste in food.
I am just getting you in front of these other voters. We're going to go on a little date to the pub. So here are a few questions for you, Julie Gunnigle.
Okay.
You ready? Okay.
Yeah, let's do this.
Beer or wine?
Beer.
Okay. Lager or stout?
What's on special?
Love it. That's fantastic. I'm going to go, all right, let's put you in the ale category, okay? We'll just go right in the middle. Fries or tots?
Fries.
Nice. That's a bold move right now.
Well, especially curly. Curly fries are the superior fries.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's true.
Are you, okay, so, for maybe we'll go to that bar for Easter Sunday one day. Are you going to have a chocolate bunny or rabbit stew?
Rabbit stew. Chocolate stew.
Nice. Okay. Tell us, all right, so you're not going to go with me. Who is your celebrity crush that you're bringing with you?
Oh, Elizabeth Warren.
Nice. Okay. That wasn't mine.
She's got a plan for our meal.
Okay, so this has been just a pleasure to have you on the program. Maybe you'll come on a little bit later, a couple of weeks down the road. I wish you great success, Julie Gunnigle, in your primary. Let's all do what we can to tell people to get onto the permanent early voter list, because it doesn't look like we're going to get any legislative action. So folks, if you're there at home and you don't have an early ballot coming to you, go to servicearizona.com. It's like 3 clicks and you are set. You shouldn't have to die for your democracy. And Julie Gunnigle. Next week, we have so many great people on the show. Monday is Marie, who's the person in charge of Moms Demand Action. It'll be 5 o'clock on this same airwave. Go to Gunnigle2020.com to see more of Julie Gunnigle. And gosh, let's just dance our way off of the show, okay? I don't know how to get out of here.
Have a good one.
All right, see you.